The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 47 species sat in the great meeting hall on Nexus Prime, the capital world at the center of known space. Their ancestors had signed treaties and made promises long before most civilizations learned to make fire. The Council believed it knew everything about how the galaxy worked. It believed it understood all the patterns of history. New species rose, they were given their place, and they accepted it. This was how things had always been. So when the sensors detected a strange new signal coming from the Orion Spur, the Council did what it always did. It sent an invitation. Ambassador Kethavora of the Sindari Collective was chosen to handle the first contact. The Sindari were the oldest species in the Council. They had silver tendrils instead of arms, and their bodies flowed like liquid metal when they moved. Kethavora had welcomed 19 species into the Council over the past 3 centuries. He knew exactly how these things went. The new species would be nervous, then grateful, then obedient. It was always the same. The humans arrived 3 months later. Their ship was called the Resolute. By galactic standards, it was crude and simple. The metal was rough, the engines were loud, but it flew, and it had crossed the vast emptiness of space to reach Nexus Prime. Captain Samuel Drake stepped off the ship first. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. Behind him walked Catherine Bell, his diplomatic advisor. She was younger, with sharp features, and a way of looking at things that made people uncomfortable. She noticed everything and forgot nothing. The council chamber was designed to impress. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Delegates from dozens of species sat in floating platforms arranged in a perfect circle. At the center stood a raised stage where new species were meant to stand and listen. Drake and Bell walked to the center stage. They did not look up at the ceiling. They did not stare at the alien faces surrounding them. They simply waited. High Chancellor Morath descended from his platform. He was a massive insectoid creature, 3 meters tall, with 6 limbs and a shell that gleamed like black glass. His voice came through a translation device that made it sound smooth and reasonable. "Welcome, humans," Morath said. "You have achieved faster-than-light travel. This is a great accomplishment. The Council recognizes your species as having potential. We offer you membership in our great community of worlds." Drake nodded politely. "We are honored by the offer. What are the terms?" Morath gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed maps and charts and numbers. "All new species begin as provisional members," Morath explained. "You will give control of 3 border systems to the Council for defensive outposts. 30% of your mineral exports will fund the Collective Defense Initiative. Your ships will follow Council navigation routes. Your technology will be reviewed and approved by Council scientists. In exchange, you receive protection from hostile forces, access to trade networks, and eventually a voice in Council decisions." The word "eventually" hung in the air. Catherine Bell studied the holographic terms. Her face showed nothing, but Drake knew her well enough to see the slight tension in her jaw. "How long until we receive full membership?" Bell asked. Morath made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That depends on many factors. Some species have achieved full status in as little as 200 years. Others take longer. It depends on how well you integrate." 200 years. Drake thought about that. 5 or 6 human generations, at minimum, living under someone else's rules, following orders, asking permission. "We appreciate the offer," Drake said. His voice was calm and friendly. "We will need to consult with our government before making any decisions." Morath nodded. "Of course. This is expected. Take the time you need. We have waited 12,000 years. We can wait a little longer." The humans returned to their ship. The council delegates talked among themselves. The Vorthani representative, a reptilian creature covered in dark scales, said what many were thinking. They are small, the Vorthani hissed. Their territory is small. Their fleet is small. They have no choice but to accept. Ambassador Kethavora was less certain. He had studied the human file. This species had clawed its way to the stars through constant war with itself. They had split atoms and poisoned their own world and still kept going. There was something in their eyes that made him uneasy. But he said nothing. The pattern was the pattern. New species always accepted. 3 weeks passed. The human delegation returned to the council chamber. Catherine Bell stood at the center stage this time. Drake stood behind her. His hands clasped behind his back. The chamber was full. Word had spread that the humans were giving their answer. Some delegates were curious. Most were bored. This was a formality. Everyone knew how it would end. Bell looked up at the assembled delegates. She took a slow breath. "Earth has reviewed the Council's offer," she said. "We thank you for considering us. However, we must respectfully decline membership under the proposed terms." Silence. Complete silence. Morath leaned forward on his platform. "Perhaps I misunderstood. You are declining?" "Yes," Bell said. "We will remain independent." The Vorthani delegate made a choking sound. Other species began to murmur. The sound grew louder, a wave of confusion and disbelief washing through the chamber. "You do not understand," Morath said slowly. "There is no independent. Outside the council there is only chaos, hostile species, pirates, empires that would consume your world without a second thought. You need our protection." Drake stepped forward to stand beside Bell. "We appreciate your concern," he said, "but we have decided to take our chances." "This is not how things are done," Ambassador Kethavora said. His silver tendrils were rippling with agitation. "In 12,000 years, no species has ever refused." "Then I suppose we are the first," Bell replied. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded that the humans be forced to accept. Others called for their ship to be impounded. A few voices, very quiet, wondered if perhaps the council had misjudged something. High Chancellor Morath raised his limbs for silence. It took a long time for the noise to die down. "You are making a mistake," he said to the humans. "A terrible mistake. The galaxy is not kind to those who stand alone." Drake smiled. It was not a threatening smile, but there was something in it that made Morath's shell itch. "We are not very good at kneeling," Drake said. "It is a human failing. We have tried to fix it many times. It never seems to work." He nodded politely to the council. "Thank you for your time. We will show ourselves out." The two humans turned and walked out of the chamber. They did not look back. They did not hurry. They simply left, as if they had just finished a mildly boring meeting. The council sat in stunned silence. For the first time in 12,000 years, someone had said no. The first reaction of the Galactic Council was amusement. The Vorthani delegate laughed openly in the chamber, his reptilian throat making a harsh rasping sound that echoed off the walls. "They are children," he said. "Foolish children playing games they do not understand. Give them time. They will learn." Many delegates agreed. The humans controlled only a handful of systems. Their fleet numbered less than 50 combat vessels. Their technology was decades behind council standards. What could they possibly do alone? High Chancellor Morath was not so sure. He returned to his private chambers and reviewed the human file again. He read about their history, the endless wars, the bombs that could destroy cities in a single flash, the way they kept fighting even when logic said they should surrender. There was something wrong with this species, something that did not follow the normal patterns. "Perhaps they need education," Ambassador Kethavora suggested during a private meeting. "A small demonstration of what waits outside council protection. Nothing harmful, just a reminder of reality." Morath considered this. It was standard procedure. When new species became difficult, the Council would send a fleet to their borders, not to attack, just to show them how small they really were. After seeing 200 warships hanging in the void, most species became very cooperative. "Do it," Morath said. "But be careful. I do not want an incident." The Sindari fleet departed 3 days later. 18 vessels, all of them larger and more powerful than anything the humans had. They moved slowly toward human space, making sure their approach was detected. This was part of the message. We see you. We can reach you. You cannot stop us. Admiral Gregory Cole received the intelligence report aboard the Stalwart, Earth's newest dreadnought. He was an older man with a shaved head and eyes that had seen too many battles. He read the report twice, then called his senior officers to the command center. 18 alien warships approaching Kepler 442, he told them. They will reach our border in 6 hours. Commander Daniel Price studied the tactical display. He was younger than Cole, with quick hands and a quicker mind. "We have 4 ships in the area, sir. The Stalwart, the Vigilant, the Courageous, and the Pioneer." 4 against 18, said Lieutenant Maria Santos from the communications station. She was small and fierce, with dark hair pulled back tight. "Those are not good numbers." Cole smiled slightly. "Numbers are not everything, Lieutenant." The orders from Earth Command were clear. Hold position. Do not engage unless fired upon. Do not provoke, but do not retreat. Cole understood what this meant. The politicians wanted to see what the aliens would do, and they wanted the aliens to see what humans would do. The Sindari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Their commander was called Vethnar, a veteran officer with 2 centuries of experience. He arranged his ships in a wide formation, weapons visible, moving slowly forward. It was a display meant to intimidate. On the Stalwart, the bridge crew watched the alien fleet approach. "They are not charging weapons," Santos reported, "but they are not hiding them either." "Classic intimidation pattern," Price observed. "They want us to see how outmatched we are." Cole stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He watched the display for a long moment. The alien ships were beautiful in their way, sleek and deadly, covered in gleaming armor. Each one could probably destroy his entire fleet. Probably. "Signal the fleet," Cole said quietly. "Formation Delta. Bring weapons online." Price looked at him. "Sir, our orders are to hold position." "I am holding position," Cole replied. "I am just holding it somewhere more interesting." The 4 human ships began to move. They did not retreat. They did not scatter. They advanced directly into the path of the alien fleet, positioning themselves in a tight formation that blocked the approach to the inner system. On the Sindari command ship, Vethnar watched in confusion. "What are they doing?" he asked. His tactical officer studied the display. "They are blocking us, Commander, with 4 ships against our 18. They must be bluffing. Continue approach, slowly. Let them feel our presence." The fleets drew closer. The tension on both sides grew thick enough to taste. On the Stalwart, Cole watched the distance shrink. 5,000 kilometers, 4,000, 3,000. "They are not slowing down," Santos said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were tight on her console. "Neither are we," Cole replied. At 2,000 kilometers, Cole gave a small nod. "Fire pattern Alpha. Warning shots only. Make it impressive." The human ships opened fire. Not at the Sindari vessels themselves, but at the space around them. Precise shots that passed within meters of alien hulls. Missiles that detonated in carefully calculated positions, a display of targeting accuracy that made the Sindari tactical officers choke on their own air. "They nearly hit us!" someone gasped on the Sindari bridge. "No," Vethnar said slowly. He was staring at the display with new eyes. They hit exactly what they were aiming at. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. The human ships kept moving, weaving through the Sindari formation with impossible coordination. 4 ships somehow seemed to be everywhere at once. Every time a Sindari vessel tried to reposition, a human ship was already there, weapons trained, waiting. Within 6 minutes, the Sindari fleet found itself surrounded. 18 ships, trapped by 4. "Message incoming from the human vessel," the Sindari communications officer reported. Admiral Cole's face appeared on screen. He was smiling pleasantly, like a man welcoming guests to his home. "You are in Earth space," Cole said. "I'm going to give you one chance to leave. Turn around now, and we will pretend this never happened. Stay, and we are going to have a problem, a very serious problem." Vethnar looked at his tactical display, looked at the human ships that had somehow turned his overwhelming force into a disadvantage, looked at the targeting data that showed human weapons locked onto every critical system on his vessel. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat." The Sindari fleet turned and fled. They jumped to hyperspace as soon as they were clear, running back to Council space with a story that no one would believe. On the stalwart, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. They had just faced a force more than 4 times their size, and they had won without firing a single shot that mattered. "Sir," Santos said slowly, "what just happened?" Cole leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, but satisfied. "We introduced ourselves," he said, "properly." The news reached the Galactic Council within hours. At first, no one believed it. The Sindari were the most advanced military force in known space. They did not retreat from primitives with crude ships and simple weapons. But the evidence was undeniable. The sensor logs, the communication records, the testimony of 18 Sindari crews who had watched 4 human ships dance around them like they were standing still. High Chancellor Morath read the reports in his private chamber. His limbs trembled slightly. "This changes nothing," the Vorthani delegate insisted during an emergency session. "They got lucky. Next time we send 100 ships, 1,000. "And if they beat 1,000? Someone asked quietly. No one had an answer. In his chamber, Morath stared at the human file. He had made a terrible mistake. He had assumed that humans were like every other species, that they could be frightened into obedience, that they would see reason. He was beginning to understand that humans had a very different definition of reason, and that frightened him more than anything else. The story of the Sindari retreat spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. In Council space, it was told as a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when simple procedures go wrong. But in the outer regions, in the forgotten corners where Council authority was weak, the story became something else entirely. It became hope. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. For 3 days, delegates argued and shouted and threatened. Some demanded immediate military action. The Kreth representative, a twisted creature of metal and flesh who had replaced most of its body with machines, called for the complete destruction of Earth. "Sterilize the planet," the Kreth said in its mechanical voice. "Kill them all. Problem solved." High Chancellor Morath rejected this immediately. "If we destroy them, we become the monsters they claim we are. Half the Council would collapse within a decade. Younger species would rebel. We would spend centuries putting down fires." Ambassador Keth Vora had a different solution. The Sindari had always understood that true power was not about weapons. It was about control, and control came from economics. "The humans need resources," Keth Vora explained. "Their territory is small. They cannot find everything they need within their own borders. They will have to trade, and we control trade." The proposal was elegant, a complete embargo. No Council species would trade with humans, no technology transfers, No diplomatic recognition, no access to the great markets of Nexus Prime. Earth would be alone in a galaxy that ran on connections. In 1 generation, they will be desperate, Kethavora promised. In 2 generations, they will be begging. We do not need to fire a single shot. We simply wait. The vote passed easily. Earth was officially isolated. On Earth, Secretary of State Linda Morrison received the news without surprise. She was a thin woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many negotiations fail. She had expected this. She had planned for it. General Howard Blake stood beside her in the command center beneath the mountains of Colorado. He was a large man, built like a soldier even at 60 years old. His face was hard, but his mind was harder. "They think we need them," Morrison said. "They think we cannot survive alone." "Can we?" Blake asked. Morrison smiled. It was not a warm smile. "We have been preparing for this possibility for 30 years, since the first signals told us we were not alone in the universe." She activated a holographic display. It showed a map of human space, but it was larger than Council records indicated. Much larger. "Secret mining operations in 12 uncharted systems," Morrison said. "Enough raw materials to supply our fleet for 50 years. Research facilities working on reverse-engineered alien technology from debris fields we discovered. And most importantly," she touched the display, and new markers appeared, scattered throughout the outer regions of the galaxy, dozens of them. "Trade agreements with species outside Council space, the outcasts, the exiles, the ones the Council threw away." Blake studied the map. "The Council does not know about any of this?" "The Council has been too busy managing its empire to notice what happens at the edges. They forgot that empires always breed rebels." The first ship arrived at Earth Station 7 3 weeks later. It was a Drexy merchant vessel, a battered freighter that had been banned from Council ports for smuggling. The captain was a nervous creature with too many eyes and not enough confidence. "We heard you are accepting visitors," the Drexy captain said. "We heard you do not care about Council rules." The human station commander, a woman named Patricia Hayes, welcomed them personally. "We care about fair dealing," Hayes said. "Nothing more, nothing less." Word spread. More ships came. A Telosian science vessel exiled for pursuing research the Council had forbidden. A Ken trading convoy, refugees from a species nearly destroyed by Council peacekeeping operations. A dozen smaller groups, species too weak or too strange to fit into the Council's perfect order. They came to Earth because Earth was the only place that would have them. General Blake organized the military cooperation. The Ken had weapons technology that humans had never seen. The Telosians had shield generators that could stop plasma fire. Each species brought something unique, something valuable. Secretary Morrison handled the politics. She was patient and careful, building trust slowly. She never demanded loyalty. She simply offered something the Council never had: respect. "We are not building an empire," she told the gathered representatives at the first official summit. "We are building a partnership. Every species has an equal voice. Every species has equal rights. We rise together or we fall together." The Drexy captain, who had expected to be treated as a servant, found himself sitting at the same table as human admirals. The Ken representative, who had watched her world burn while the Council did nothing, heard humans promise to fight beside her people if the Council ever came again. "Why?" the Telosian scientist asked Morrison after the summit. "Why do you help us? We have nothing to offer you. We are broken species, rejected by the galaxy." Morrison looked at him with something like sadness. "Because we know what it feels like to be told we are not good enough," she said. "Because we know what it feels like to be alone. And because the Council was wrong about us. Maybe they were wrong about you too." Within 2 years, the Independent Systems Alliance was born. 12 species, bound together not by force, but by choice. They were small compared to the Council. Their fleet was modest, their resources were limited, but they were free. On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Morath received weekly reports on the Alliance's growth. Each report was worse than the last. Species were leaving Council space to join the humans. Trade routes were shifting. The embargo that was supposed to strangle Earth was strangling the Council instead. "How did this happen?" the Vorthani delegate demanded during another emergency session. "They were supposed to be isolated. They were supposed to be desperate." Ambassador Kethvora had no answer. The Sindari had spent 12,000 years perfecting the art of control. They knew how to manage species, how to keep them dependent, how to make them need the Council. No one had ever taught them what to do when someone said no and meant it. In her office on Earth, Secretary Morrison looked at the latest intelligence reports. The Council was beginning to panic. They were making mistakes, pushing too hard in some places, not hard enough in others. The perfect machine was starting to break down. General Blake entered with news. "The Council is mobilizing a fleet, 200 ships, maybe more. They are heading for the Nexus Gate." Morrison nodded slowly. The Nexus Gate was the primary hyperspace lane connecting Council space to Alliance territory. Whoever controlled the gate controlled movement through half the galaxy. "They are trying to cut us off," she said. "Block our expansion. Trap us in our own corner of space." "What do we do?" Morrison stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains. The sky was painted in shades of orange and red, beautiful and fleeting. "We fight," she said quietly. "Not because we want to, but because if we do not, everything we have built will be for nothing. Every species that trusted us will be abandoned. Every promise we made will be broken." She turned to face Blake. "Contact Admiral Cole. Tell him to prepare the fleet. All of it." The war that would reshape the galaxy was about to begin. High Chancellor Morath had not slept in 4 days. His private chambers were covered in reports, data screens glowing in the darkness like dying stars. Every piece of news was worse than the one before. Trade revenues falling, military estimates showing the Alliance growing stronger, quiet whispers from Council species questioning whether the old ways still worked. 12,000 years. The Council had ruled for 12,000 years, and now it was all coming apart because one small species had refused to kneel. "We should have destroyed them immediately," the Vorthani delegate said during yet another emergency meeting. His scales were dull with stress. "When they first refused, we should have sent everything, crushed them before they could spread their poison." "And now?" Ambassador Kethvora asked quietly. His silver tendrils hung limp, exhausted. "Now we do it anyway. We take the Nexus Gate. We cut them off from the rest of the galaxy. We starve them slowly until they surrender or die." The plan was simple. 200 Council warships would move to the Nexus Gate, the great hyperspace junction that connected the outer regions to the heart of Council space. Once the gate was secured, the Alliance would be trapped. No reinforcements, no trade, no hope. High Chancellor Morath approved the operation. He had no choice. If the Council showed weakness now, more species would join the Alliance. The rebellion would spread until nothing remained of the old order. The Council fleet departed from Nexus Prime with great ceremony. 200 ships, the largest military force assembled in 3 centuries. Sindari cruisers with their flowing silver hulls, Vorthani destroyers bristling with weapons, Kreth dreadnoughts, half machine and terrifying. Every species had contributed their best. Admiral Vethanar commanded the fleet. He had been given a second chance after his humiliation at Kepler 442. He would not fail again. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Gregory Cole received the intelligence reports aboard the newly commissioned Alliance flagship, the Defiant. Captain Patricia Hayes stood beside him, studying the tactical display. 200 ships, Hayes said. Her voice was calm, but Cole could see the tension in her shoulders. We have 140. I have fought worse odds, Cole replied. He almost smiled. Not much worse, I admit. Commander Daniel Price arrived with the final fleet roster. The Alliance had gathered every ship it could spare. Human dreadnoughts formed the core. Ken attack frigates provided speed and flexibility. Telosian shield ships could absorb incredible damage. Drexy scout vessels would serve as the fleet's eyes. 12 species, fighting together for the first time in history. The Council fleet will reach the Nexus Gate in 18 hours, Price reported. If they take it, they can block all traffic between our space and the outer regions. Half our allies will be cut off. Cole nodded slowly. Then we cannot let them take it. The Alliance fleet jumped to hyperspace, 140 ships racing toward a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. They arrived at the Nexus Gate 3 hours before the Council fleet. The gate itself was a massive structure, a ring of ancient metal 50 kilometers across. No one knew who had built it. No one knew how it worked. But ships that passed through it could cross distances that would normally take years in mere hours. Position the fleet in defense formation around the gate, Cole ordered. I want overlapping fields of fire. No gaps. Captain Hayes took the Defiant to the center of the formation. She looked at the faces of her bridge crew, human officers, a Telosian science specialist, a Ken weapons officer, different species, united by something stronger than treaties. You know what we are fighting for, Hayes told them. Not conquest, not glory. The right to exist on our own terms, the right to be free. The Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a wall of steel and fire. 200 ships spreading across the void in perfect formation. The sight was terrifying. Admiral Vethanar surveyed the enemy position. 140 ships against his 200. The Alliance was outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped with their backs to the gate. They cannot win, his tactical officer said. The mathematics are clear. Vethanar remembered thinking the same thing at Kepler 442. He remembered being wrong. Do not underestimate them, he warned. Attack in waves. Wear them down. Do not give them room to maneuver. The battle began. The first wave of Council ships swept toward the Alliance formation. Plasma fire lit up the void. Missiles streaked between the fleets. Ships died in flashes of light that would have been beautiful if they were not so terrible. The Alliance held. Telosian shield ships absorbed punishment that should have destroyed them. Ken frigates darted through the chaos, striking at weak points in the Council formation. Human dreadnoughts anchored the line, their weapons firing with mechanical precision. They are not breaking, Vethanar observed after the first hour. Why are they not breaking? The answer came from his tactical officer's analysis. Council fleets fought by the book. Every maneuver was documented, practiced, refined over millennia. Alliance fleets did not have a book. They improvised. They adapted. They did things that made no tactical sense until suddenly they made perfect sense. A human captain would see an opportunity and take it without waiting for orders. A Ken squadron would change formation mid-battle because the situation demanded it. The Alliance fought like a living thing, constantly evolving, constantly surprising. The Council fought like a machine, and machines could be broken. 8 hours into the battle, the tide began to turn. The Alliance had lost 30 ships. The Council had lost 60. The mathematics no longer favored Vethanar. Sir, we should consider withdrawal, his first officer suggested. Withdrawal? Vethanar's voice cracked. We have come to crush them, to end this rebellion forever. We cannot retreat. But the choice was taken from him. Admiral Cole had been waiting for this moment. The moment when the enemy was committed, when they could not pull back without losing everything. All ships, Cole's voice rang across the Alliance fleet. Execute hammer and anvil. The Alliance formation split. Half the fleet surged forward, driving into the center of the Council formation. The other half swept around the flanks, encircling the enemy. It was a maneuver that should have been impossible. It required perfect coordination between species that had never fought together before. It worked. The Council fleet found itself trapped. Ships that tried to retreat ran into Alliance vessels. Ships that tried to advance were cut apart by crossfire. The perfect formation collapsed into chaos. "Fall back," Vethnar finally ordered. "All ships, fall back to hyperspace." But the Alliance was not finished. Captain Hayes drove the Defiant deep into the enemy formation, her weapons blazing. She was not trying to destroy ships, she was hurting them, pushing them away from the gate. When the survivors of the Council fleet finally escaped to hyperspace, they left behind 93 destroyed vessels. The Alliance had lost 32. But more importantly, the Nexus Gate remained in Alliance hands. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the last Council ships disappear. His face was tired. His uniform was stained with sweat and smoke, but his eyes were bright. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them the gate is ours." On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Morath received the news in silence. His advisors waited for him to speak, to rage, to order another attack. He did none of these things. He simply sat in his chamber, staring at the reports, understanding at last what he was facing. The humans had not just won a battle. They had proven that the Council could be beaten, that the old order was not invincible, that 12,000 years of dominance meant nothing against a species that refused to accept defeat. For the first time in his long life, Morath felt something he had never expected to feel. Fear. The galaxy was changing, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The war did not end with the Battle of Nexus Gate. The Council was too proud, too afraid, too invested in the old ways to simply surrender. For 18 more months they fought. Smaller battles, desperate raids, attempts to break the Alliance through force that failed again and again. But everyone knew how it would end. The only question was how long the Council would take to accept it. Secretary Linda Morrison watched from Earth as the reports came in. Council species were breaking away. The Drexy, once banned from Council ports, now controlled 3 major trade routes. The Ken had rebuilt their fleet with human help and retaken their ancestral systems. Even some Council members were quietly reaching out, asking what terms the Alliance might offer. The old order was dying. Something new was being born. The final battle came at the edges of Council space itself, a last desperate attempt to stop the Alliance advance. Admiral Cole led the combined fleet against the remaining Council forces. The fighting lasted 2 days. When it was over, the path to Nexus Prime lay open. High Chancellor Morath requested a meeting. The negotiation took place in the same chamber where humanity had first been offered subjugation. Secretary Morrison sat at the center table now, where new species were supposed to stand and receive their orders. She sat because she had earned the right to sit. Morath looked older than before. His black shell had lost its gleam. His limbs moved slowly, as if carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "You could destroy us," he said quietly. "You have the power now. Your fleet could burn Nexus Prime. You could scatter the Council species across the galaxy. No one would stop you." Morrison looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the species the Council had conquered, all the civilizations forced to kneel, all the freedom traded away for the illusion of security. "That is the difference between us," she said. "We never wanted to destroy anyone. We just wanted to be left alone." Morath made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Left alone, such a simple request, and we could not grant it. We were too afraid, too convinced that our way was the only way. "Yes," Morrison agreed. "You were." The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. Morrison led the human delegation. Admiral Cole attended as military advisor. Captain Patricia Hayes represented the Alliance fleet, Ambassador Kethavora spoke for the Council, though his voice carried little authority now. The Treaty of Nexus Prime was unlike anything in galactic history. There were no reparations, no territory seized by force, no species conquered or humiliated. Instead, the Council was reformed. The old hierarchies were abolished. The provisional member system that had kept young species as servants for centuries was dismantled forever. Every species, whether they had ruled the stars for millennia or discovered fire last week, received an equal voice. Trade became truly free. No more embargoes, no more economic warfare. Species could deal with each other as equals, without permission from distant masters. The Collective Defense Initiative was replaced by a mutual protection agreement. An attack on any member was an attack on all. Not because a treaty demanded it, but because the members chose to stand together. Admiral Cole gave the final speech at the signing ceremony. He stood at the podium in the Great Chamber, looking out at hundreds of delegates. Former enemies sat beside old allies. Species that had fought each other for generations now shared tables and conversations. For 12,000 years, Cole said, this galaxy was ruled by fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of each other, fear of change. Every species that joined the Council did so because they were afraid of what would happen if they said no. He paused, his eyes moving across the assembly. Humanity refused to be afraid. Not because we are braver than anyone else. We have plenty of fear. We just learned a long time ago that fear is a poor master. It makes you do things you regret. It makes you hurt people who do not deserve it. It makes you build cages and call them safety. His voice grew quieter, but somehow stronger. The Council asked us to bargain, to trade our independence for security, to become one more managed species in a galaxy full of managed species. We said no, not because we wanted war, not because we thought we were better than anyone else. We said no because some things are not for sale. Freedom is not for sale. Dignity is not for sale. The right to make your own choices and live with the consequences is not for sale. He looked at High Chancellor Morath, who sat in the front row, his ancient form bent under the weight of defeat and shame. You asked us to kneel, Cole said, and we told you that we are not very good at kneeling. We meant it. But here is the thing you never understood. We did not want you to kneel either. We did not want to rule you. We did not want to replace one empire with another. We just wanted to live, to grow, to make our own mistakes and learn from them. He gestured at the assembly, at all the species gathered together. This is what we wanted. Not dominion, partnership, not control, cooperation, not an empire that demands obedience, a community that earns trust. The chamber was silent. Somewhere in the back, a young Drexy officer wiped her eyes. Beside her, a Telosian scientist nodded slowly. A Ken warrior, scarred from battles against Council forces, sat with his hands folded, something like peace on his weathered face. The old order is over, Cole concluded. What we build now is up to all of us. It will not be perfect. We will make mistakes. We will disagree. We will sometimes fail each other. But we will do it as equals. We will do it together. And that is worth more than 12,000 years of perfect control. He stepped down from the podium. The silence held for a moment longer. Then, slowly, the applause began. It spread through the chamber like a wave, growing stronger and stronger until the ancient walls seemed to shake with it. Captain Hayes stood in the back of the chamber, watching. Beside her, a young Drexy officer and a Telosian scientist who had once been exiles. Species that had been thrown away by the old order, now welcomed as equals. What happens now? The Drexy asked. Hayes smiled. It was not a triumphant smile. It was something softer, something like hope. Now we build something better, she said. Together. Outside the great chamber, the stars burned bright against the endless dark. The old order was gone. In its place, something new was taking shape, fragile, imperfect, full of possibility. Humanity had come to the stars expecting to find gods or monsters. Instead, they had found species not so different from themselves, scared, proud, searching for meaning in the vast emptiness of space. The Council had offered them a place at the bottom of a hierarchy 12,000 years old. Humanity had refused. They had fought. They had won. And then they had done something no one expected. They had forgiven. Not because they had forgotten the wrongs done to them, not because they were saints or heroes, but because they understood that hate is a chain, and chains are meant to be broken. Secretary Morrison stood at the window of her quarters aboard the Defiant, looking out at Nexus Prime, the capital of the old order. The heart of a system that had crushed countless species beneath its weight. General Blake joined her. "We could have burned it all down," he said quietly. "Yes," Morrison agreed. "We could have." "Do you think we made the right choice?" Morrison thought about her grandchildren on Earth, about the worlds they might visit someday, the species they might meet, the future that stretched out before them, uncertain but open. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I know that destruction is easy. Building something that lasts is hard, and the hard things are usually worth doing." She turned away from the window. "Come on," she said. "We have a galaxy to rebuild." The stars waited. They had been waiting for a long time. Now, at last, something new was coming, something that had never existed before. Something that began with a single word, spoken by a small species that refused to kneel. No,